What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. Today, we're going to be discussing the Dan Haren trade, which occurred on July 25th, 2010, just over a decade ago. Now, this trade was between the Los Angeles Angels and the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the Angels got the aforementioned Dan Haren in the trade, the starting pitcher Dan Haren in the trade, from Arizona in exchange for four pitchers, two of whom were some of the top pitching prospects, not only in the Angels farm system, but in baseball. So why did this trade occur? Simply put, the Angels were in contention and they thought they had a chance to break up the AL East dominance of the American League at that point, as the AL East had won three consecutive AL pennants for three different teams. Of course, Boston in 2007, Tampa in 2008, New York in 2009. So it was going to be a very interesting run for the Angels. They were good and they wanted to make a run. Now, Arizona, on the flip side, was entering a rebuild, and they decided, you know what, we can use some young pitchers in the system, and they took a chance. So, who won this trade? Let's start with the Angels. So, they got Dan Haren in the trade, and he had a good 2.5 year run in the city of Los Angeles, and he was good. He wasn't elite, but he was a good enough starter for the team, and he ate some innings. But he ends up leaving after the 2.5 seasons are over. Now, the Angels are involved later on in this trade, but it's not directly from the original trade, so we'll get to that in a moment. So how did Arizona do? So they got themselves a trio of starting pitchers and a relief pitcher. We'll start with the reliever because it's Rafael Rodriguez, and he only made a couple starts in the league for or he only made a couple appearances in the majors for the Diamondbacks, and then he didn't do much, and he gets designated for the assignment. Real easy. So Joe Saunders, on the flip side, he was a serviceable player for 2 seasons before he ends up getting shipped to the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for a reliever named Matt Lindstrom. Now, both of these players were on expiring contracts, so it was kind of, Arizona was hoping that the reliever would do good enough that they could re-sign him. Baltimore, of course, was making a playoff push at this point. So the trade made sense for both teams. Now, on Arizona's side, Matt Lindstrom, he spent a month in Arizona. He did okay, but he ends up walking as a free agent. So next we have Patrick Corbin. And Patrick Corbin, so he basically gets called up pretty quickly. And he was one of the top 2 prospects acquired in this trade, along with the next guy that we're going to talk about. And Corbin, he ends up being a 2-time All-Star over 7 seasons for Arizona. And he was criminally underrated because he played for Arizona. And Arizona players typically don't get the press that you'd expect them to get. So Corbin, again, made 2 All-Star games over those 7 years. But he did end up needing Tommy John surgery during that time frame. So he did miss a year. But he ends up walking after the 2018 season, goes to Washington, wins a World Series there. So he was a good pickup, though, for Arizona. And the last player that Arizona got in the original part of this trade was starting pitcher Tyler Skaggs, who again was one of the top prospects acquired. And Skaggs, he was definitely a highly regarded prospect for Arizona, but he didn't do that well when he started, got his first cup of tea in the majors. And he only made 13 starts for the team before they traded him. Now, they traded him in a 3-team trade with the Los Angeles Angels, who I'd mentioned, and the Chicago White Sox. So essentially with this trade, Arizona got the outfielder Mark Trumbo from the Angels. The Angels would get starting pitcher Tyler Skaggs back from the Diamondbacks, along with relief pitcher Hector Santiago from the White Sox, while the White Sox would get outfielder Adam Eaton from the Diamondbacks. Not the best trade for Arizona. So we'll start with Arizona here. And Arizona with Mark Trumbo, he underachieved dramatically over his 1.5 season stint in Arizona before he himself ends up getting traded, and he's traded to the Seattle Mariners alongside relief pitcher Vidal Nuno in exchange for 4 players in catcher Wellington Castillo, relief pitcher Dominic Leone, who's from the state of Connecticut, outfielder Gabriel Guerrero, and shortstop Jack Reinheimer. So how did these 4 players do in Arizona? So Wellington Castillo, he spent 1.5 years as the Diamondbacks starting catcher, primary catcher, and then he ends up walking, but he was pretty good. Leone, he wasn't too effective over 1.5 seasons before he himself just ends up getting designated for the assignment. Guerrero, he spent 1.5 years as a minor league player for the Diamondbacks before he ends up leaving as a minor league free agent. And Jack Reinheimer, he only had a brief stint in the majors, and he was mostly a minor league player, but he ends up getting designated for the assignment as well. Now, how did the rest of these trades go? We'll start with LA just because, like I said, they were in the original trade here, getting Haren. So, Tyler Skaggs, he had a decent 5.5 years in the city of the Angels, if you will. And he was decent, but he wasn't elite. He missed a year and a half of those 5.5 years after needing Tommy John surgery, and he also dealt with various under injuries. So he wasn't elite, but he was a good, serviceable starter. And then, as we know, on July 1st, 2019, he tragically passed away from what was later revealed to be a drug overdose. So the Angels did actually end up throwing a no-hitter their next game after he passed away. Very emotional moment. They obviously laid down all the jerseys because they were all wearing his number 45 jersey. So, and then Hector Santiago, he was a good player for them, but he was inconsistent for 2.5 years before he left the team. And he had a brief stint as a closer as well, but he wasn't great for them. And we'll finish up this part with the Chicago White Sox. So Adam Eaton was a stud, and he was criminally underrated, just like Corbin was, because he played in the lesser-known Chicago team, and he was great. So he spent 3 years in Chicago, and to show you how good he was, he actually led the American League in triples twice in those 3 years. And he ends up getting traded. Now, he's traded to the Washington Nationals in exchange for a trio of pitching prospects. And those pitching prospects are starting pitcher Lucas Giolito, starting pitcher Reynaldo Lopez, and starting pitcher Dane Dunning. So Chicago is still reaping benefits from this reward, or from this trade. And so Chicago, with their 3 players, now these wars are as of the 2020 season. So Lucas Giolito, he had himself a really solid 3.5 years at this point in the big leagues. Now, he had a really good 2020 season, and he's been, his ERA hasn't been great during his time in the big leagues. Whole 2020, he's had a pretty good year, but he's been getting a lot of strikeouts. So he's looking like a future ace for Chicago. Reynaldo Lopez, on the flip side, he was looking better before 2020, but he had a bad 2020 season, so he's looking like he might be on the way out. But he's also been in the big leagues for Chicago for 3.5 years. I'm counting the 2020 season as a full season just because it's an odd season. And then Dane Dunning, he made his debut in August of 2020, and he's made 7 starts, I believe it was. He's been good. His ERA is south of 4.0, but it's barely south of 4. So, solid pickup for Chicago. He, again, is looking like a future key piece for Chicago. Now, since we're right here, we'll talk about the Nationals getting Adam Eaton. And Adam Eaton has been an okay player for the past 4 seasons, but he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, and 2020 was not kind to him. He had a bad year in 2020. So, since we're right here, we'll talk about Seattle. And Seattle got, Mark Trumbo, and Trumbo was decent over a half season before he ends up getting traded. Nuno, on the flip side, they actually tried to make him a starting pitcher, and he did not do good in the starting role. So they end up converting him back to reliever, and he does good for 1.5 years before he ends up leaving the team. And then, of course, the last team here is the Baltimore Orioles, who got Joe Saunders. And Saunders, he was good over 1 month before he walked. Again, he was on an expiring contract. So who won the Dan Haren trade? Going by WAR, the Diamondbacks did with a 15.3 WAR, and the Angels got a 13.8 WAR. Now, the true winner is going to be the Chicago White Sox, though, because they got a 26.6 WAR from their trio of pitchers and Adam Eaton. Baltimore got a .8 WAR out of Joe Saunders. Washington got a 2.0 WAR out of Adam Eaton. And Seattle got a 2.8 WAR out of their 2 players. So all in all, a very interesting trade. It wasn't the biggest trade during the 2010 trade deadline era, but it was an important one that really has helped out Chicago in particular. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great rest of your day.